things I love, Batman and Elseworlds stories. Often they're combined together in the comics. Elseworlds, of course, spins out of DC. I think they have historically done the best alternate universe stories. Marvel's had some really big like multiverse events, although the multiverse, what a Pandora's box that turned out to be. But I really like Elseworlds stories. However, they've kind of fallen out of favor now that they've hit the mainstream to a degree. I mean, people like Joker. So that's very much an Elseworlds story, although it's really going to get to be an Elseworlds story with the sequel. But I think the issue might be is that, you know, when you try to pass off these like different takes on these classic characters as the new main version, maybe that's where people get frustrated. But I think my love of Elseworlds stories is one of the reasons that I don't mind different takes on characters and playing around with the archetypes and stuff like that. The Boys, to some degree, is almost like an Elseworlds story. Batman Caped Crusader is very much an Elseworlds tale. And while, again, some of the things that they try don't work, I think some of them do. And so I find it very interesting, and I just move past the stuff that doesn't work. But I'm curious, because this is my spoiler coverage of the show, what your thoughts are, and you can, of course, share them down below, including spoilers. But I think that a fun structure for this video would be to talk about the villains in Batman Caped Crusader, because Batman, not only in addition to being awesome, has the most famous rogues gallery in all of fiction. That's right, all of fiction. I mean, certainly for a single character. I think the only overall villains group that might be able to challenge him are the Disney villains. But, you know, I'm talking villains that go up against one specific character, nobody can top Batman. I know some of you will disagree with me. I'll be curious to hear your arguments down below. And the new animated series, Batman Caped Crusader, has bold, exciting, and in many cases, controversial takes on these famous villains. So, of course, we gotta rank them. Oh boy, I counted 12 villains overall, basically. There were a couple other little cameos, which I'll mention, but 12 main villains. So here's my ranking of them, the Batman Caped Crusader Season 1 villains, but including that Joker tease at the end. And as always, I look forward to hearing your own thoughts and rankings down below. And again, all 10 episodes, by the way, in case you haven't heard, because they haven't advertised the show hugely, but they dropped today. They binge dropped it. All 10 are up right now on Prime Video. And again, I recommend you check it out. I think that the artistry is so good that you can forgive some of the misfires, because it's very cool in many regards. All right, dead last on the list, Harley Quinn. Whew! This did not work. And it's weird because Harley Quinn is usually at the top of these kinds of lists. But here she is, rock bottom. There's probably been more variations of Harley Quinn than any other Batman villain to date, which is interesting because she's like the newest. But also, because there have been so many takes on Harley Quinn, I get it. At this point, how do you stand out from the crowd? And I guess this show decided by doing a god-awful job. The way it was pitched to us at first was that this Harley would be a reversal. Her civilian psychiatrist would be the zany persona, and then her costume villain persona would be the one who was, why so serious? Who wants to see a serious clown? I don't know why that wasn't brought up in the writer's room. But even beyond that, the clown gimmick simply doesn't fit with her villainous plans. And that's to program the rich, or brainwash the rich and selfish businessmen that she treats as a psychiatrist into donating all their money to charity, often to causes that they had caused problems for, before Harley drove them insane. They give all their money to charity and then they end up in Arkham. Don't you love the design for Arkham? Oh, it was so cool. It looked a little bit like the Nurse Ratched asylum, actually, from the Ryan Murphy series, which was not good, but it had good production design. Why did Harley have them play dress up? I guess it was to play into some of their psychoses, but it just did not work. The whole thing was like just a hodgepodge of bad ideas, but nice production design. It would seem this Harley is trying to use that mallet to bash a square peg into a round hole. Like just nothing fits in this story with this character. Also, she doesn't do acrobatics and she doesn't use that mallet herself. Those are Harley trademarks. As for her civilian persona, not that funny. I was promised that that would be the silly one, and I didn't think she was that silly. The two interesting things about her civilian persona were that she had a Birds of Prey kind of thing going on, where she was friends with Barbara Gordon and Renee Montoya, and was interested in Renee Montoya as more than just friends. In fact, Harley is the one who's in charge of the romantic relationship here. And she takes on the dominating and in some ways manipulative role, like that phone call between her and Montoya. That could have been Joker calling Harley, and it would have worked. So I don't know if it's considering what Harley's supposed to represent, you know, abuse towards women, and to flip it around so that she's to some degree the abuser. I don't know how I feel about that. It just did not work. It was interesting that she went back for Barbara, right, her friend, and that she did almost get Batman, to her credit, right? Almost got him, the title of one of the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Plus, in the end, she would rather die than be put in Arkham herself, although she did not seem mentally ill to me. She's almost, I think, more like Hugo Strange. I only realized this when I was doing my notes for this rankings. I didn't notice it when I was watching the show, but it's so true, because she's even brought in by the Gotham Police Department to do a profile on Batman, and she ends up being Bruce Wayne's court-appointed psychiatrist when he punches a TMZ-style journalist for a very crass comment about Bruce's mother, which, by the way, that was one of my favorite moments in the show, because I thought it was so visceral and it was so different for a Batman story. I thought that was really, really well done. And also I think it really reflects how, well, actually, that kind of tabloid journalism has always had that element to it, but, just how insensitive it is. Harley has sometimes been Bruce's psychiatrist in the past, but it's always been to help him. Like Harley, with her own double-edged, her own dual persona, I guess you could say, is the only psychiatrist that maybe could help and trust Bruce. I thought that was really great. And she kept his secret because of patient-doctor privilege. I thought, that they did that in the recent the current Harley Quinn series. I thought that was really good. Here, though, this cat and mouse game that they have going instead is, again, more Hugo Strange. In fact, it would have made more sense to have this character be a gender and race-bent Hugo Strange than slap a Harley Quinn costume on the character. This is Hugo Strange, the more I think about it. That's totally who they have created here. And she's Harley Quinn in name and costume only. Barely. All right, number 11, Onomatopoeia. Oh, this was an overall interesting episode. And Onomatopoeia with his henchmen certainly had some cool visual moments, like when they all got off the train. That was cool. But not only is this a ridiculous Batman villain, he's hardly in the episode. Reed Scott certainly collected a nice paycheck for having to only say a handful of words, like 10 words. That's all he had to say. The real villain of this episode ended up being number 10, Jim Corgan. Now, he's not much more than a last-minute twist, a corrupt detective who turns on Barbara Gordon to collect the bounty that's been put on her head. But the reason that he's a little higher up on this list than the other two is that he has a fantastic deep cut. Now, in the comics, there have been 3 versions of Jim Corgan, one the Spectre. But most recently, he was a corrupt detective in the comic book series Gotham Central from Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker, who are actually writers on this show, but ironically did not write this episode. While in the past Jim Corgan had been the Spectre, in the Gotham Central comic, he was a misdirect who ends up murdering his partner, a good cop, Crispus Allen, and Crispus Allen is the one who becomes the Spectre. Gotham Central was such a good comic from the writing to the artwork that just seeing Corgan here for a few seconds and getting some recognition for that comic made me so happy. And that's why he's a little higher up on this list. Go read Gotham Central. All right, number 9, Firebug. Again, not a huge role, but wow, does he do a lot of damage. And again, so disturbing. The way I really like, as you'll see as this list goes on, I like the disturbingness of this show. I like the adult film noir creepiness of it. But the way he reimagines a peaceful neighborhood aflame, not just wanting to hurt these families, these innocent people, but targeting an underprivileged community that's just trying to get by. Serious Mindhunter vibes. Ooh, this show is a little bit like Mindhunter as well. Maybe that's another reason that I like it. And one of the earlier examples this season, the Batman Caped Crusader, is not playing around. Of course, the real villains in this episode are Flass and Bullock, who intentionally let Firefly loose in an attempt to draw Batman out, like a bat moth to the flame. And it worked to a degree. They're so evil, they're on this list, and much higher up, as you'll see. Number 8, TwoFace. As I said in my review of this show, I'm so tired of having to rewatch TwoFace's origin story again and again and again, particularly because nobody does as good a job as The Long Halloween's take on the origin, which came out in 1996, well, 1996 to 1997, almost 30 years ago. Here, the big moment doesn't even happen in court. It happens in the men's room. Still, it was very anticlimactic, I guess because, of course, most of us knew what was coming. Still, I do like the design on Batman Caped Crusader for both Harvey Dent and TwoFace. Harvey is very much a golden boy of Gotham, but instead of being like, I really liked his look here, but instead of being an overall good person, or at least somewhat morally conflicted, he definitely leans towards corrupt. Someone who abuses the system with any consequences until there are serious consequences. Although I think it's very interesting. I think his good looking face is almost a mask for his corruption. And, you know, it's almost like the scarred part underneath is what was always underneath, and the acid just makes it more, allows the public to see it. So that was kind of cool. And the Harvey Dent also, to me, gave Reggie Mantle vibes from the Archie comics. Also, I think another difference here is that instead of the transformation into Two-Face being tragic, which is how they played it on Batman the Animated Series, and in many other instances, here, in many ways, it seems like it's, again, inevitable. Like that is kind of his true persona. But it offers him still the chance for redemption, like to earn the good side of his face, so to speak. I did not expect him to sacrifice his life for Barbara. I was like, is he really dead? We'll talk about that in a moment. But, he'd gone up against Barbara in court many times. But still, even though they'd had such a contentious relationship, when he was down, she tried to help him, just like she tried to help all of her clients that he had so aggressively and unjustly persecuted for the sake of his own career. And unlike Harley, it seems that he might actually be dead because, they had him on screen. I was like, yikes. But Batman needs a Two-Face in his rogues gallery. So I wonder if for season 2, Two-Face might be somebody else besides Harvey Dent. I wouldn't put it past this show. And I got to tell you, I'd be kind of curious to see what they come up with. It might be awful, but I'd still like to see it. All right. Now, and it's already been renewed for season 2, by the way. All right. Number 7, Penguin. Yes, it seems like a gimmick to gender bend the Penguin. And it got a lot of bad publicity for this show out of the gate. But I got to tell you, for some reason, it just didn't really bother me that much. I mean, yeah, at first I rolled my eyes, but we've had so many different types of the Penguin as well, and they've had very little variety. So at least this was different. I appreciated this being different. But what I really liked about this version of the character was how dangerous the Penguin was, willing to kill one of her own sons, dropping his body into the icy Gotham waters like she had so many others, like when Batman was going through in his little submarine or whatever, and like you saw all those crates down there. I was like, that's great. I love it. I love when a story goes super dark. I really like this kind of stuff. So it really appeals to me. Now, of course, she got the wrong son, and it was the other one who had turned stool pigeon, and that was I liked that twist as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they both turned on her. She was not a good mom. And then also with her costume, because with the stockings and the high heels and still her physical awkwardness, she looked even more like a bird with awkward skinny legs and a big fluffy body. I thought that was a cool visual effect. This Penguin also played into the film noir female boss archetype. And as a film noir fan, I appreciated that nod. She was also very much a show mom. I liked it. I thought it was good. Minnie Driver, though, is wasted here. I was surprised that this was her voice because she can do much better voice work, as we know from Disney's Tarzan. So much nuance and personality in her Jane. I was surprised she didn't bring a little more to the table as the Penguin. Number 6, Nocturna. But speaking of voice work, I'm equally as unimpressed as I am with Minnie Driver's work here. I am as impressed with McKenna Grace as Nocturna. I didn't know she had it in her. She really did a great job. Although first off, before we talk about Nocturna some more, did you catch all the Easter eggs in this episode, which also made me really enjoy it? Leslie Tompkins, Killer Croc, and also each of the children that Nocturna targeted represented one of the Robins. That was so great. I thought that was so fun. I was like, as they kept mentioning names, I was like, are you doing what I think you're doing? And as a Carrie Kelly fan, it was nice to me that her Robin really got a chance to shine in particular. Carrie Kelly doesn't get as much attention as the other Robins, which is a real shame. Here, Nocturna, she's not a particularly well-known Batman villain, but she has fought him in the comics. And here she's reimagined to be younger, or at least look younger. But her powers, her really delightfully disturbing, creepy powers, are what I thought was coolest about the character. This is one of two supernatural episodes in Batman Caped Crusader, and I'm kind of loving the change of pace for Batman. I think it still fits in his world, but again, it's something different, and I think the 2 episodes were some of the strongest of the season. And once again, I appreciate the show raising the stakes. Nocturna accidentally kills her brother, but intended to kill those kids. She's gonna, drain them dry. And having Bruce Wayne at the charity event, searching the fair, kind of the way he met Dick Grayson in the comics, was also a unique and fun way to use the Bruce Wayne persona. I liked that a lot. I thought that was great. Number 5, Gentleman Ghost, the other supernatural villain in season 1. Now, obviously, at first, I expected some Scooby-Doo shenanigans where you're like, it only seems like it's a ghost. So I was very surprised that it actually turned out to be a real ghost. Like when he came through the fireplace, I was like, uh-oh, what are you gonna do, Batman? Gentleman Ghost has typically been a Hawkman and Hawkgirl villain. I don't know how that works. But he's fought other heroes in the comics as well. Here, I not only enjoyed upping the stakes, again with a supernatural villain, and also what the heck was going on with Alfred there? Whew, that was getting serious. But a reverse Robin Hood, stealing from the poor for himself, certainly goes against everything Bruce Wayne stands for, as Batman is kind of has Robin Hood elements to himself. I also really liked looking into the history of Gotham's favorite sons, from Craddock before he turned evil, the flashback scene. The artwork was so good! It almost in some ways was like Toad Hall and stuff like that, like doing it through these old, almost Disney-style portraits and pictures. But then, the current generation of Craddock, who was very much a fallen favorite son of Gotham, to other favorite sons of Gotham today who are doing pretty well. Bruce Wayne, and also Lucius Fox, himself reimagined here, is coming from a wealthy family as well. Loved that stuff. Loved all of it. And Gentleman Ghost brought a new player into the story, Linton Midnight, a John Constantine villain in the comics, who here is reimagined as like an anti-hero, sort of a DC version of Dr. Voodoo meets Dr. Facilier. I liked all that. I thought that was cool. All right, number 4, Bullock and Flass. Bullock, what are you doing? My jaw was on the floor. I mean, we expect this from Flass, a notorious crooked cop from Batman Year 1. But Bullock? Flass is the brains of this duo, but they are both bad dudes. And they are some of the scariest characters on this show because they aren't some fantastic villains that you see coming from a mile away. They mirror real-life, discrete abuses of power. Batman is so disgusted with Flass, he even holds him at gunpoint. Do you know how much you have to upset Batman to do that? And it's a powerful moment where Batman, after a long pause, expertly just misses Flass with the bullets. As if Batman is equating Flass with the also very real-life style criminals who took his parents. It's like all these other fantastic villains, whatever. But Flass reminds him the most of that murderer. Oh, that was incredible. These evil men, from Flass and Bullock to that criminal who took down Bruce's parents on that fateful night, they might think in the grand scheme their actions are small and insignificant, so maybe that makes them feel less guilty about it. But their consequences can be the most devastating of all. Ah, that was great. All right, number 3, we're getting down to the wire. Catwoman. Now, while I don't love her classic look here, I get that it's based on the comic, but totally impractical for a cat burglar. Running over the rooftops of Gotham? Give me a break. But I do think this show, with the help of Christina Ricci as the voice of this Catwoman, create an exciting Selina Kyle. I did get a kick out of the 1940s over-the-top elements that they gave her, like that cat-themed car. I was like, that's so ridiculous, I have to respect it. And that she brings a panther with her to the big museum showdown at the end. Great idea. You'd think Catwoman would use big cats more often. They're obviously more difficult to control, but the whole idea is that Catwoman can do it because cats like her so much. She's a cat whisperer. Now, whereas Bruce and Selina come from the opposite ends of Gotham in the comics, here they're actually quite similar, both orphans of the Gotham elite who don't play by the rules. However, Selina's father isn't dead, but in jail for fraud, and he's left her no money, unlike the fortune that Bruce inherited from his parents, and allowed him to make positive choices for society. But Selina, again, her, stuck in a difficult position, but inspired by Batman to break the rules even more, and also having a background as an experienced gymnast. I'm like, yoink, you took that from Harley. But anyway, I wish almost they were on the same gymnastics team. I'd rather do that instead of taking that out of Harley's background. But Selina decides to become a thief. Now, she's very femme fatale coded from the film noir genre, even down to her court appearance, where she charms her way, wearing all white, how innocent, into a mere slap on the wrist. That was great. I love when Alfred said, she promised, sarcastically says, she promised never to do it again, so I guess that's why they let her go. The Batman-Catwoman interactions are a lot of fun, from their flirtations to Catwoman being impressed by Batman and learning from him in each encounter. The one weird thing, speaking of Alfred, though, is that Selina had her very own, Greta, voiced by the hilarious Jackie Hoffman, and clearly visually modeled after her as well. But while it started out as a weird addition, I was like, why are we doing this? Greta double-crossing Selina at the end was pretty great. And it really solidified how much Selina is like Bruce, but not, even down to her Alfred being very disloyal. So when you think of it in that regard, I mean, it was very, very clever, the way they made them, still a yin-yang situation, but it's like an even tighter one. I really thought it was good. All right, number 2, Joker. That's right, he only shows up for a few seconds at the very end with the tease for season 2, which again has already been greenlit. But you can already tell this Joker is going to be good, or at least very sick. And I think this is going to be a really exciting take on the character. We can see that on the outskirts of town in an unassuming shack. What a shot. He's been testing his Joker serum to get the smile just right. So creepy and evil. And now that it's ready, so is our villain. And the voice, serious and smooth, yet still sounds like Joker. I mean, that's really amazing that they were able to do that. We don't even see his full face, but what we see so far is very promising. There have been a lot of takes on the Joker as well, but as Harley Quinn has risen in popularity, it's often become, recently, at his expense. So it would be exciting to see him re-exert himself here in Batman Caped Crusader with the 1940s film noir style. I was impressed, and I am excited. All right, then finally, my favorite villain in Batman Caped Crusader Season 1 is Clayface. For some reason, this episode just really spoke to me. As you can see from my list here, it's a combination of the villains themselves, but also the way they're introduced in the stories around them, as it should be. Perhaps I really liked Clayface in this episode because it wasn't just a film noir story, but it echoed the classic films about Hollywood as well. I'm talking Sunset Boulevard or The Bad and the Beautiful. These are great movies. You should watch these movies. Especially with a detective, in this case, Renee Montoya, interviewing witnesses with plenty of flashbacks as she heard their stories, like the killers in Double Indemnity, back when insurance investigators really were doing more than the police, it seemed. Also, while in episode 1, Penguin had been very brutal, she focused on other criminals and the police, while here, regular people were put in very serious danger by Clayface. Incredible danger. When he took out that producer, I couldn't believe it. And these regular people were also a fantastic mix, still very 1940s stylized, but also very reminiscent of what Hollywood was actually like at that period. What it was actually like, including, for instance, our missing starlet being a romantic cover for her closeted LGBT co-star. And the design on Basil Karlo. Dan Donahue, by the way, voice work, mwah, beautiful. True, he might not look like a leading man, but he looks like quite the character actor. And by the way, little did he know, decades later, Hollywood would expand its idea of who's a leading man. But here he turns himself into a Lon Chaney who doesn't need any makeup and prosthetics to change his face. And with stars to this day consulting with sketchy doctors and medical approaches to look younger and more attractive, this origin for Basil Karlo becomes also a cautionary tale. And he can use the Clayface treatment on others, so he can mold their faces the way he likes. For instance, creating a double to make it look like he was killed. The way Batman discovered that in the morgue, that was great. I don't know why he thought to poke his face. I think, it was sunken in a little bit or something, but that was great. But Karlo, also like so many who have become addicted to cosmetic surgery and the like, goes too far, abuses it. And when he goes down when Batman accidentally caves his face in. So disturbing. It was a great shot of that final shot of Clayface. I don't know if he died or not. They didn't make it clear. Great character. I don't think. They got to bring him back. All right, so that's my ranking of the villains in Batman Caped Crusader Season 1. Who were your favorites, and who do you think didn't quite work out? And again, what did you think of Batman Caped Crusader? It took a lot of bold swings. Did any of them work for you? As I just said, some of them worked for me, enough so that I could overlook the ones that didn't. All right, so share those thoughts and rankings down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.